And we're live. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Sorry we're late. It's due to my technical difficulties on my side. Wanted to just thank Kristen so much for coming on the show today. Kristen is basically an agency operations veteran, has spent many years working inside agencies. And really today we wanted to kind of dig into how to use the data that's already exists inside your agency to help improve customer acquisition. So thank you, Kristen, for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I have been really interested in this topic, and I think, you and I connected because you're sort of on the go-to-market marketing side of things for agencies and service providers, and I like the back end numbers and the efficiency numbers and things like that, the less sexy stuff. So, yeah. Should be a great conversation. By way of introduction, my company is called Service Crowd. We're at servicecrowd.io if anyone wants to check that out. I have been working with agencies for over 10 years now. Service Crowd's mission is to help great companies find great service providers and help those service providers create great client experiences. We're a networked provider ecosystem, mostly specializing in B2B marketing and revenue operations. And then we also provide consulting services for agencies and service providers that is focused on ensuring their service delivery, the way they are delivering their services, is as profitable and successful as possible. So that's what we do.
Awesome. Well, I think that'll come into play. Like you'll be able to share some of that expertise today. I think one place that I wanted to start was really, I guess, digging into what data in particular do agencies need to be thinking about collecting or paying more attention to when it comes to, basically improving their customer acquisition system.
Yeah. So let's take just a quick step back and talk a little bit about who some of this stuff might benefit. So when we think about expanding your customer acquisition, right? You want to, if you're an agency that already has sort of a basis of, a couple of staff members, you're above that $1 million per year revenue range, somewhere in that range, you're likely starting to feel a little bit of friction on the systems and operations side. And so, in order to grow your business, you need to grow with strong margins. And, those strong margins will allow you to be more flexible as the work ebbs and flows. Like agency life, it's work ebbs and flows, sometimes seasonally, sometimes without rhyme or reason, sometimes based on market. So if you understand what you're currently doing that's profitable and is working for you and which clients are profitable, then you can design and develop your offerings around those projects and clients. So I just wanted to take a quick step back and kind of talk about why we're talking about the operational data. And that's kind of where that comes into play. So unfortunately, I'm going to start with everybody's favorite topic, time tracking. We all love it. Everybody loves it. But you need to be doing time tracking, and your time tracking needs to be reflective of the actual hours your team is spending doing work to service clients. So it's really important, and it's not important just for billing. When we work with clients and we ask them, how profitable are each of your resources? How profitable are the projects? How profitable are the clients themselves? If you have multiple projects going on with the same client, a lot of times there's one level of that or two levels that they don't know, because small agencies or growing agencies are going to err on the side of, just get the work done, we'll worry about the rest of it later. But the time tracking piece is super, super important in understanding what it is you're doing well, what you're doing profitably, and what you could be doing more of, right? So if you have, time tracking at those kinds of three levels, like client, project, and theoretically task within the project, or if you want to think about it as SOW and sort of task within that then allows you to do a couple of things. It allows you, again, to see your profitability. It allows you to calculate an average billable rate. across your client set, which may not be the actual, hourly rate that you're selling your services for. And it allows you to then get to a true margin, a true gross margin at each of those levels, which is really important in deciding what you want to be doing more of, right?
Yeah.
So time tracking is the first one. If you have a handle on time tracking and your staff is I knocked my mic with my many hand gestures. I'm Italian. It comes with the territory. So if you have a handle on time tracking, we go for 80% compliant, right? Like 80% compliance on time tracking is miles better than most people are doing. So if you're running an agency, you have a couple of staff members asking for, or like being satisfied with 80% compliance is probably great. Then you obviously need to calculate your true cost of service. And that's another place where I think agencies have sort of lacked discipline and clarity around how long it takes you to manage the service hours, right? So if you're thinking about delivering work, there are the people that are actually click clack hands on keyboards delivering the work, and then there are people that are there to manage and supervise them. That could be account managers, that could be project managers, that could be line managers, that could be just senior staff members who sub in and help out or whatever. And that's where we start to see a loss of fidelity in time tracking and a loss of fidelity in actual cost numbers for how you're servicing clients. So if it takes you an hour to manage 20 hours of work, that's cost that needs to be blended into what that 20 hours of service cost you, right? You have to figure that part out. And time tracking will help you do that and help you get to that actual like blended rate that you're charging clients and the actual blended cost of all of that goes in. And from there, again, the goal here is to look at what you're already doing, decide what's profitable, what's successful, what makes your clients happy. And then, you and I, when we kind of previewed this, we talked about like the top down, bottom up approach. I'm very much describing a bottom up approach. Like, what are we currently doing that we're great at, that we're profitable at, that we can build a foundation of expanding our client base on? And then from there, there's a lot of things that unlocks. So the time tracking and that blended cost, I think, are the two pieces that are really, really important. I mean, it all comes back to time tracking, but a lot of folks don't think about the cost to manage work as a part of the overall blended cost. But I'm also curious, like, what you think folks need to be doing as they're looking at like this problem of, okay, I'm pretty successful. I've kind of hit a revenue ceiling. I want to expand who I'm working with and what I'm doing, or sell more of what it is I'm doing well. What sort of like overall market inputs would you suggest that they add into that kind of data-driven view?
Well, I mean, I think the data-driven view is super, super important. I mean, at the end of the day, like the business can only continue running if the business economics continue to work. So I think that's the foundation. But I think, as a company, you're not just the economics of it. It's the, do you enjoy working with client A versus client B or C? And so when you're thinking about positioning yourself in a more focused way, for growth or scalability, I think, look at the economics, like figure out, okay, well, maybe this offering is actually like this offering pencils out best. And then it's like, oh, well, who do we provide that offering to, and who are our best clients in that area, and not just best clients from like a financial standpoint, but like, who do we get along with the best? Who is, gushing about our work with them, and basically try to double down on what's working, and either phase out or you can continue working with the clients that maybe are not the best fit, as long as the economics still work. But when it comes to, okay, well, as we grow, who do we want more of? Well, we want more of basically the best fit, where we're it's a really good mutual fit. The economics all line up. I think that's what we want to go for, at least from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, I think that hits on to something that using your data can also unlock, which agencies, especially right now, like it's tough market out there right now. But who you need to say no to is really, really important from a growth standpoint. Taking
Which is
every
hard for
project.
agencies.
it's so hard. And I think that kind of talks a little bit to how there's a difference between how agencies should be growing and how like a product based company should be growing, right? You want to grow your agency on good gross margin, on things that are going to make your staff members excited and happy to do. And that may not be some exponential growth rate, but if you're able to dig into the data, if you're able to understand who the best clients are, to your point, may not just be most profitable, but it might be, that are doing the work that your staff wants to do, that are giving your staff the opportunity to grow. All of those things are inputs there. Growing with those clients is going to be so much better for your long-term health and success as a services business than taking as much work as possible as quickly as possible, right?
Yeah. I think one thing too that I think your approach helps with is I think when you have a really good economy, you can be adding service lines and not paying a lot of attention to the economics of it. And, oh, is this actually a profitable line of business? And then when the economy maybe is not performing so well, all of a sudden you realize, oh, we're actually, you don't realize it maybe, but like you're losing money on multiple lines of business. And it's like, well, if we want to continue growing and be a healthy company, we have to figure out like what lines of business actually make sense to continue doing and which ones we need to, realize that we're never really maybe a good fit in the first place as something that we offer. So, well, I guess want to kind of pivot into another question. What do you think agencies? I mean, this is kind of related to that, but what do agencies tend to get wrong about understanding exactly what services they offer? Do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been on both sides of this, meaning I've been watching agencies do it, and I've actually done this myself. Like, I think a lot of agencies will say we do this under this distinct point of view, but really what they offer is staff augmentation. They offer hours for pay. And there's nothing wrong with offering staff augmentation, especially right now where there's probably a lot of need in a lot of, what's historically been the agency client base and not a lot of budget there. However, I think it's really hard to grow profitably and reasonably in a pure staff augmentation model. Like, you pay me $150 an hour, I deliver those hours, right? And I'm not delivering a set of deliverables, I'm delivering my hours to you, right? And I think a lot of agencies end up writing contracts that are effectively staff augmentation like that, when really, if you ask them, they're like, well, we do an audit, and then we implement this thing, and then we do that. And it's like, well, who's directing that work? Are you self-directing that work? Are you producing an outcome for the client? Or are you allowing the client to manage your project and your time? And again, like I said, there's nothing wrong with taking on staff augmentation work. However, when we think about the types of projects that we need to uncover in order to create that basis of reasonable, profitable, happy growth for agencies, those kinds of projects are really hard to untangle. They're really, really hard to say, like, okay, well, these two staff members that were assigned to this one client, they did a little of this, they did a little of that. Great. That doesn't tell us anything, right? So I think a lot of times agencies are actually closing contracts and, creating relationships with clients that are based on more of a staff augmentation model. When, if you ask them, they say that they have distinct offerings. And so in my view, if you're stuck at that revenue ceiling or you're wanting to grow in a sustainable way, you need to deep dive with your customers into what they are actually buying from you and why. And it needs to go somewhere beyond, we're buying 20 hours a week of manpower, right? It needs to go somewhere beyond that. I like to think of agencies as differentiating on kind of breadth of service, depth of service, or like a unique point of view. And it's really hard to suss that out if you're effectively just selling them hours. So I think what agencies tend to get wrong about an understanding of their services is they're not marrying up their idea of what it is they do well with how their contracts are actually structured and how they're actually delivering the work. So that's also something, we like to take a look at. Are you just an hourly contractor, more or less, for this client? And again, nothing wrong with that. If you're doing it on good margin and you can retain the staff that like to work that way, that's totally fine. But it's not going to give you a good basis for understanding how you are successful, what projects you're successful with, and how you can repeat that, because a lot of times that staff augmentation model is overly reliant on the individual consultant on your staff to maintain that relationship.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's hard from a pricing power standpoint, to raise those rates. I think the more you can be focused on, basically, I think it can be a race to the bottom. Somebody else, competitor wise, comes along that's, neither of you are differentiated, but they offer it at a cheaper price. Then, if from a consumer standpoint, you're interchangeable, then they're just going to go with the cheaper one. So it's like, I think that's where the, kind of the outcome versus the output model can be just a stronger way to position yourself, because then there's basically more value that you can be building into how you work with them, or maybe more strategy that will allow you to charge more.
Yeah. And I think there's a number of reasons. Yeah, it's definitely always a race to the bottom. And even worse, what we see, and again, my background has mostly been in marketing, B2B marketing and B2B marketing and revenue operations. And what we see sometimes happening in that staff aug model is you bring in highly skilled agency to come in and do some stuff for you, increase the manpower. You're the client. You're like, I have more things than I can do. I'm just going to bring in this agency to do it. But it's somewhat unstructured, and it's in that staff aug model, hours for pay instead of outcomes for pay. And what ends up happening is this highly skilled agency will get everything organized, and the client will look at that and be like, hey, great, I can hire somebody offshore. I can hire somebody at a lower cost to do this now because you've gone in and created the structure for me to do that. Now that's great. Now you know that you're good at creating the structure to create lower cost for the client. And that's something that maybe you can start talking about, and maybe you can go out and find more people that need that, because that's actually a good value add over the long term. But that if you're not aiming for that to begin with, you can sometimes get the rug pulled out from under you, as it is, continues to be a race to the bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so the next question I wanted to ask is around kind of what's the best way to determine your most profitable clients, and the problems that you're currently solving for them. Like, kind of maybe getting into the details.
Yeah. So again, once you've done the work on your side to get that operational data, you've looked at your time tracking, everybody's about 80% compliant. You've looked at your true cost, including the cost of managing those resources. You have an average billable rate. You have cost by true cost per resource, and you marry all that together. And you're looking, and you're like, cool, I have this list of projects that have been highly profitable. You look at the clients that you did those projects for. Your next step is to talk to the clients. Always talk to the clients. I mean, and it depends on who is doing this type of work. If it's the founder or CEO that's kind of in charge of operations still, obviously it's always great for those types of people to reach out to clients and say, hey, can I have a conversation with you? In my view, and I would love to hear what you think about customer client interviews, but in my view, it's always better to try and articulate your service offering in the same language that your clients would describe it, right? And so the only way to do that is to talk to them.
Yeah. No, I mean, I always, in copywriting, people talk about copy isn't created, it is assembled. And I think if you're doing really good customer interviews, you can be like, oh, like I talked to 5 different clients, and this pain point was basically they used the same language every single time, and we're talking about it one way on our site, but maybe we should be using these terms that, all these 5 clients have all been using. And then all of a sudden you realize, once you do that it's like, oh, this is actually, it resonates way more, and we're actually getting better fit clients coming in that resemble those clients that we interviewed.
Yeah, we work with our clients even to come up with sort of account expansion plans, like by account. And the first step for that is always go talk to the client, ask them how they're doing, ask them what their marketing roadmap looks like, try to work on that marketing roadmap with them. If they don't want to do that with you, at least ask for access to their overall business goals. What problems are you actually solving for them? Not what did you sell them, not what am I doing on a day-to-day basis, but what is the outcome that they were hoping to get by hiring you, and how close are we to hitting that outcome? I think I've seen this happen, and I can talk about like client satisfaction measurement and stuff in a minute, because I also think that that's really important. But we've seen this happen time and time again. Like in my travels as running a service delivery team, it's like the client hires you to do something. There maybe isn't as much structure put on that engagement as there needs to be. And then, it's supposed to take 6 months for you to do these 6 things, but the client randomizes you and you're like, okay, well, I'll do this other thing. I'll do this other thing. You get to the end of your contract and the client's like, ooh, we didn't actually do any of this stuff. Like, you did a lot of other great stuff for me, but now I need to articulate back to my boss what it is you did for me so I can keep you on staff. And we didn't actually cover anything that was in the original agreement. And I think that can be a pitfall in creating like up chain dissat with your services, right? Like, depending on who it is that's actually hiring you, if it's somebody more in a manager or director position and they're overwhelmed, as everybody is right now, because every marketing staff has had to lean out over the last 2 years, they're going to put you on projects that maybe don't directly involve the original outcome that they were hoping to get from you. And again, that's fine if that's truly what they need you to do, but that also, the agency service team needs to be aware that that's happening and articulate that back to the client. Hey, great, we're happy to take this on. This is a bit of a scope change from what we originally did, and we're happy to apply our hours, but we want to make sure that we're servicing those original business goals and outcomes. And so, should we really be doing this? Is this really what you want us to be doing? And doing that double check. Some of that stuff you can't control as the service provider. Some of it you can. But that's always something good to be aware of, and goes back to that whole thing about, making sure that you understand the outcome that they're looking for. I also think that there's some of this, like talking to clients, that can and should be automated, and that's CSAT measurement. This will be different for every type of service provider, depending on how long their contracts are, what they're actually doing, how they're doing it. But, automating some CSAT survey collection can be a really good way to hear back from clients. Typically, clients are going to respond to that if they're wildly happy or wildly unhappy. You're not going to get the people in the middle responding to your automated survey, but at the very least, it gives you a window and an opportunity to do that. So you can send them a survey 30 days after they get kicked off with you. How is the kickoff process? How is the translation from sales to service? Is the service team that you've been assigned really nailing what you were hoping that they would nail? Do they have the expertise that you were looking for? That allows you to both make sure that you can right set the engagement if things are suddenly going off the rails, but it also allows you to get back what is the client hoping for in their own language, in their own words, in a sort of quick and efficient manner, right? So big fan of that. Obviously, you'll want to also ask anybody who's churning or not going to need your services anymore, hey, I tend to think of churn as like good churn. We did everything they needed us to do, and now they're capable of running it themselves. Fantastic. Come do a case study with me. Or bad churn. We were super unhappy and you didn't provide the value that we thought you would have, right? So I think those 2 points right after kickoff of the project, or a few weeks after kickoff of the project, and then toward the end of the project, especially if the client is churning or about to churn, to get to that, measure of CSAT, and then somewhere in the middle of the project, if at all possible, depending on the length of projects, right?
Yeah. Basically, we'd like to get data from you, regardless of which bucket you fall into, because either way, it's going to help us improve how we serve our clients.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll point to things that maybe we should never do again, in addition to the things that we should be doing lots of, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, what next question I wanted to ask was around like, what role do you see reference, evidence, and advocacy playing in all this?
Yeah, I am a big fan, like I said, of customer interviews, customer CSAT measurement, doing that in a way that is quick and easy. This is easier if you're of a size where you have an account management structure and team. It's a little harder if you don't have that in place yet. But it's rigor that I really encourage all of Service Crowd's network partners and our consulting clients to think about. It's one that Service Crowd needs to also think about soon. We are relatively new, and we've been working with clients for a few months now, and we also have to kind of, figure out how we're going to build the CSAT cadence into what we do for clients. But reference and evidence. So this is true for B2B marketing as well. Your customer kind of life cycle structure is something like, the clients kicked off with us, they're happy. We're trying to move them from, implementing or kicking off to happy. And then we're trying to move them from happy to advocate, and able to give us reference. So reference is, we can pull out their names if a prospective new client asks us for references, and then evidence is more of like the customer story format, right? So your automated CSAT collection can help you point to the happiest clients that you can then get in touch with, and do a little recorded Zoom call or Google Hangout or whatever the case may be. I know a lot of agencies kind of don't want to put the time into this, because a lot of times you're going to do that, and then their legal team is going to put the kibosh on you using any of it. But getting into a cadence where it's like, oh, you were wildly happy with that project we delivered. Let's chat about it. You can tell me in your own words what problem we solved. Again, you can use that later to build your offerings. You can tell me what we did really well. Even if I never get to use that as an external facing marketing tool, all of that is so valuable to be collecting directly out of your clients' mouths. It's really hard to build in the time to do that. I know that, when I was running revenue teams, it was incredibly hard to want to take the time, and the clients feel that too. But, there's ways you can incentivize that. You can gift a coffee or a lunch or something to allow them to do that. But building that process in, how do you go from, happy client to client that's willing to be a reference and provide a customer story, or even just sit down and talk with you about what your team did well, what you could improve on, and how they think about your services will then allow you to take all that, and create better positioning for yourself. Even if you can't, ideally you'd be able to create a case study and put their logo all over it and talk about it on LinkedIn for, the next 3 months about how great it was, and publish the video and all. But even if you can't do all that, even if you're sure that your client's legal team will never approve the use of that, do the interview anyway. Talk to them anyway. It's going to be valuable. And that's, the reference and evidence piece is something that I know a lot of agencies do for clients and then sort of forget to do for themselves, right?
Yeah. And it's huge though. That's how you get future clients. The more evidence that you have of happy client work, the better. And I think one thing too that I've found is, legal teams can kind of get in the way. There's all sorts of different things that can kind of create friction or drag in that process. But the way I've thought about it is kind of having like a sliding scale of social proof that you're hoping to get. It's like a case study would be the greatest. But if there's worries about the details, being in there, it's like, okay, well, there's a couple routes you could go. You could just get a testimonial, and it's qualitative. It's not talking about any of the actual, dollar amounts or percentages that were affected. And, or you can anonymize it. We say we improved results by X amount for a fintech company, or something like that. Make it generic so that, it's not like we're revealing any one particular client's details. So, yeah. Well, I guess one of the questions I wanted to kind of wrap up with is, if there are agency folks that are tuning in and they, heard a lot of different good insights, where would you recommend that they kind of start today? What would you say, go get started with time tracking, today, or what order would you say that people should think about focusing on these things in?
Well, yes, I sure hope that they're already doing some amount of time tracking, but to start by taking a look at how you're tracking time and whether it aligns with what's in your SOWs, the projects that you're actually selling, right? Again, the goal of that is to get the data that allows you to see what offerings you're already doing that are profitable and creating happy, successful clients, right? So if you keep that in the back of your mind, going into your data as it exists now, your time tracking data, your revenue data, your cost of services, your COS data, and asking yourself, how accurate do you think it is? The one thing that I will say for agencies in that sort of growth stage, right? Typically you still have a founder or like a CEO that's like deeply involved with service delivery. And that person is usually the worst at time tracking. So like that's step one. Like if you're the person in charge of looking at all this data and you're also servicing clients, are you time tracking or are you just making your best guess at the end of the month? So that's step one. Getting to a high fidelity and a structure within your time tracking that allows you to look at these pieces in a clean and organized way. The other thing that I would say, like if you're somebody who's like listening to this and you're like, man, I really want to start moving toward a more data-driven operational view of how I'm servicing clients, but like we're just not there yet. And we really need to start thinking about our offerings, that's a place where the client interviews, like go reach out to clients and have a couple of conversations with them that come into play, and interviews with your employees. Reach out to your employees, ask them. I think it's also valuable to kind of take the same questions you would use in a client interview and kind of turn them back onto your employees as well. That can create some good social content, potentially, that can create a better understanding for you of exactly how they are going about their work. And you can ask them, when you were delivering this work, what frictions did you feel? What was unclear in how you were supposed to be doing it? Those can all point to ways that you can be at least more efficient in what you're already doing. And it allows you to hear from your employees which types of clients worked really well with their skill sets and which types of clients did not, which is also another input in deciding who you want to go after. So I would say, like, look at the fidelity of your time tracking and cost data. Can you get to that? Okay, what was truly my average billable rate? What was I truly billing clients for the hours that we worked? And that might not be the same hourly rate that you sell at, because you could be over servicing or under servicing some clients. Once you have that, what's my true cost? Again, adding in those management layers. If that's still well beyond the sophistication that you have within your tools and time tracking systems, I think starting with client interviews and employee interviews. And those questions should be things like, on the client side, why did you originally engage with us? What were you hoping to get out of the engagement? What do you feel that we're really strong at, and what do you feel like we could improve on the client side? And on the employee side, it's things like, again, how clear was the client's, wished for outcome? How clear was that when you took on this work? How was your skill set a fit or not a fit for this particular client? And I think that's like off the cuff, and maybe I would phrase that differently, because I don't want employees to feel like you're re-interviewing them for their own jobs. So maybe like scratch my actual language there. But the goal is to just engage your oh, hang on. Hold on. I had my phone connected to my Bluetooth and it was doing things.
Oh, no.
Anyway, the goal is not to scare your employees and make them feel like you're interviewing them for their own jobs. Again, the goal is to really get to that, okay, my employees are comfortable with, this type of work. I'm profitable at this type of work, and clients love it when we do this type of work. That's a home run for, yeah. So, and the other thing that it can get to is when you look at, say, those profitability numbers and you're like, man, my employees really enjoyed doing this type of work and the client thought we were really successful, but we did not deliver that profitably. The next question becomes, is there a way to create an offering around this where we could be more profitable, where it could contribute more to our bottom line because our employees enjoy it and our clients think we're good at it. We're just not very efficient at it. And that's a whole different conversation about standard operating procedures and, package delivery, and maybe some fixed, maybe raising the price of whatever you sold it for, maybe depending on what that was to begin with. But, trying to reduce the overall cost while still being able to deliver something that your employees think is valuable and your clients think is valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. This has been super helpful. I think for our audience, they'll definitely find it valuable. For people who want to kind of figure out either how to work with you or just to kind of keep up with you online and stay in touch, what's the best way for people to do that?
Yeah, come find me on LinkedIn. Certainly, you can follow me there. Our website is servicecrowd.io. There is a page on there that's agency consulting services, and again, if part of what we want to do is create great client experiences by matching the right agencies with clients and the right, maybe flexible freelance services with agencies, should agencies be looking for that. So, you can find us there and read about what it is we do for clients.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for coming on the show. And I feel like I learned a lot. So I'm sure our viewers did too. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thanks, David. You too.